You're listening to Mark of the Maker. And this is episode 14. Hey everybody, you're listening to Mark of the Maker, and I'm Mark Steiner. This is episode 14, and in this episode we're going to talk to a collector friend of the show, and we'll get to that in just a minute. Let's make sure we got the whole crew here. Hey Tom, are you here with us?
I'm here.
Michael, are you here?
I'm here.
All right, Mr. Sean Kendrick, are you here?
Hey, buddy.
All right. So this is our first collector spotlight episode. Sean came up with that name. It's excellent. And joining us tonight is a collector named Kevin Devitt. And some of you will know Kevin, some of you won't. Kevin's been around the knife scene for a long, long time and is a friend of ours, and will, after this show, hopefully be a friend of yours. But we think he's a very interesting guy. So, Kevin, you want to say hello to everybody at home?
Hello, and just tickled pink to be here. It's amazing with my IT skills that you even invited me. But.
Don't let Kevin fool you. He's a NASA scientist when it comes to technology and computers. So.
With a chainsaw.
Hell yeah.
Any science that involves a chainsaw, I like it. All right, so usually at the beginning of the episode, we like to talk about why we're doing what we're doing. So, Sean, you want to tell the folks at home why we're talking to Kevin and kind of picked him to start with?
Yeah, sure. We chose Kevin as our first collector spotlight for several reasons. Firstly is the breadth of Kevin's collection. He has modern and classic knives. He has knives by superstars and unknown. And he covers the gamut from art to tactical and everything in between. Second is Kevin's journey into knives is an interesting one, and it's a story worth telling. And last but not least, Kevin's a hell of a lot of fun to talk knives with, and we wanted to get that on tape. So, Kev, how are you doing, buddy?
Doing really good. It's an honor to be here, regardless of who's here.
Well, thank you, bub. Don't get too honored yet. The night ain't over.
We have lots of opportunities ahead of us to screw this up. So,
indeed. So let's start with a little bit of personal background. Where are you from, man?
I was actually born in New York, like the rest of the world, in Brooklyn. Come from a large Irish Catholic family. I don't think there's any other. I'm the last. I have 7 brothers and sisters. I had a twin brother that was 4 years older than me, but the span is like 23 years.
Wow.
So yeah, it's an interesting concept. When I was born, there was so much shit in the box that we had to move out of the city and, find another house. So we moved out to the burbs. Although I was born in Brooklyn, I was actually raised in, northern New Jersey. It was kind of an interesting beginning, I should say. My mom brought us home, me and my brother being twins, and she basically handed me and my brother off to my 9-year-old sister and went out and got a job and said she's done raising kids.
Oh, so
wow. When I say I was, kind of raised by a pack of wolves, I'm, kind of not kidding. It was just not your typical upbringing, but it was a hell of a lot of fun. That's how it started.
Interesting. So, Kevin, with that much span of age between you and your oldest sibling, I mean, there were siblings that were kind of off and on their own, doing their own thing by the time you were born, right? Or was everybody still kind of packed together in one place?
Yeah, pretty much. 1 or 2 were almost out of the house. Just getting into the work world. But it just seemed like it was like Animal House. I mean, there was just, and typical Irish Catholics, cousins and uncles. And I mean, the place was just packed. And I pretty much, what was interesting too is like, there's all these photos I look at later on in life, and it's like, I never went to bed. And there's always these photos of me in, either my birthday suit or undies, and everybody's in their pajamas and they're half asleep and they looked really pissed off. And it was just, that's the way it was. It was a crazy upbringing. but a lot of fun, like I just said. My mother was an interesting person. She was she sort of cracked the whip and ruled the nest just with a look, and you knew not to cross her. Where my dad was like, his job was kind of like keep the peace at any extent. So again, it was just, you could get away with anything you wanted to as long as you didn't get caught.
I was feeling you ran pretty wild, didn't you?
Yeah. I mean, and again, it's like, I don't want to blame my siblings, but some of my older brothers who are already like in their teenage years, who I kind of idolized growing up, they got a kick out of like, this little wired haired kid just going crazy. And, I think there was a lot of instigating going on as well. So I'll kind of leave it at that.
I feel like they may have modeled the Home Alone movie after you, the main character being named Kevin too, wasn't it?
Man, it's like,
call. And it's an Irish surname, so hey, what do you know?
Mm-hmm.
There was like all these stories, like, I guess I was just born to climb with a chainsaw, because like there's like stories that all my furniture in my room were like bolted to the walls because I would like push them over. And again, I had a partner in crime with a twin brother, so who knows, he might have instigated this. And I was like, I was like the Chuck Yeager type of guy where, just I'll finish the experiment. But like all the dressers and stuff were like bolted to the walls because I would push them over to the second story windows and then climb down the side of the house. It was like a cedar shake house. And this is why my older brothers, they had a love-hate relationship with me. They basically like fenced in the backyard, and then we'd burrow underneath the fences. So they dug trenches underneath the fences and put fences in the ground. Wow. So yeah, it was, and I would just like walk around in my birthday suit in the neighborhood. And I think everybody got to know me pretty quick. That's for sure.
That sounds like they got to know you pretty well that way.
Yeah, they definitely did. Everybody knew who Kevin and Michael were. That's for sure.
That sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was fun.
Now, man,
I don't think it was fun for my parents, but it was fun.
You said climbing around with a chainsaw. Go ahead and fill us in on what that pertains to.
Yeah, basically, like I'm a landscape architect on paper, but I'm just like a glorified hole digger. I do a lot of, like you guys work with raw materials from the ground up, along with doing a lot of tree work. But I just do the tree work really out of sport, to see if I can actually still do it. It's sort of like a sidekick, wearing another hat, so to speak. But mostly
we all got our hobbies.
Yeah, totally. And it's funny too, because, I'm almost 60 and I'm still doing this crap. And everybody's like, man, like I quit this 30 years ago, my contemporaries. And it's definitely kept me in a really fit shape, but like the body's definitely starting to fall apart these days. I got a new hip this spring, and I was back climbing this week, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, excellent. Good for you.
Did you do a lot of like have to cut firewood, or how'd you end up with the chainsaw?
Basically this goes back to like when I was this goes back to the family. Like when I was 7, 8 years old, my brother, who was I have 5 brothers, but one of my brothers that was about 13 years older than me, he came back from Vietnam. And he was the only other redhead in the family, so I kind of idolized him, I guess, maybe for that. But he was just, again, he was like the cool brother. And we just got along like peas and carrots. And when he came back from Vietnam, I guess I could tell you the story about that too, because that intertwines with why I love knives.
Yeah.
When he came back from Vietnam, he decided to take a little cross-country trip. We live in New Jersey, but when he got off the line, they basically asked him, well, where do you want to go? And he had heard about this burlesque show in San Francisco. So him and his buddy flew into San Francisco and then saw the burlesque show, and then continued their route home. So in the midst of that, his stuff came home before him, and he allowed me to open up the box. And the box was freaking huge. It was like 3x3 by about a foot tall. And I just remember the thing like it was yesterday, and I was probably like 8 at the time, that the thing just looked like it went through a gorilla cage. It was just hammered. And I proceeded to take it apart. And one corner, I noticed that the butt of his M16 was hanging out of it. And, I tell this story, and it's just people like, people that are like under 30, there's like, no fucking way. It's like, this couldn't happen. But, this is the 60s. Shit rolled differently,
Right.
And, I opened up the box, and there was a big trench knife. There was a Randall, but he wouldn't let me touch that. That was like a personal knife that he got from a buddy that didn't make it. And then like a Victorinox, I think it was the 1908 folder. I looked it up, and it was funny. But when he got home, I had asked him, it was like the week before school ended, and I said, Tom had already started a landscape business prior to going into the war. And my other brothers and my dad kind of just kept it going. And it was basically a pretty, the operation was like cutting grass and plantings and, kind of like basic stuff. But I had asked him, I said, I'm almost done with school. Like next week, can I come and work with you? And I'm like, to get an idea of this is like, my brother just got off the front line of Vietnam, and he's been in the world of shit for like, they didn't even decompress him because the war got like so crazy. So he's, to say the least, pretty wild. But it didn't matter. He was my older brother, and I loved him, and I just wanted to be with him. And I went to work with him. And it was, again, part of my unique upbringing was like I'm hanging out with like a Vietnam vet that he didn't really like look at me as a kid. He looked at me as labor. Yeah. And I mean, he just kicked my ass. Like, and I would just come home almost like crying, but I was like just too stubborn to quit. And by a month or halfway through the summer, I was just gung ho hardcore. I was just like the little man's disease took over. I got through basic training, and I'm talking like I was the smallest kid. Like in school, I was probably maybe 50 pounds. That's probably a stretch, but working with him, and then after a couple of weeks, he actually hired another Vietnam vet. So I'm sitting in like a mason dump with 2 Vietnam vets, cleaning my pocket knife and listening to their, stories that they would never really tell anybody else. So it was quite a bit of an eye opener. But that was really my first like encounter of like, my love for knives. And it just took off from there.
So Kevin, was that box sort of like, I guess, a treasure box in a way, sort of in your child's mind? Because I remember like growing up, my dad had like a place where the guns and stuff was. And when that opened up, it was almost like a special place because it had these grown up type of things in it. Did that kind of kick off the same?
Completely. I was like, I had no idea what I was going to get myself into when I opened this box up. And like, it was me and my brother Tom had a pretty special relationship, I guess, because he was like dyslexic, and, he definitely had some issues. And by the time he got back from Vietnam, he had a lot of issues. He saw his best friend blown up in front of him. I mean, I don't want to get into it, but you kind of get the story. And, he was intense. So he was definitely an acquired taste to deal with.
Yeah.
But I never really gave him any shit, and I never judged him. And, by him letting, I have a whole bunch of other siblings, but he let me take it apart, and he trusted me, like, with what was accountable there and everything. So that it definitely made it more special. And it's something like, it's in a weird way, I always think about it. Like I remember that I'm 58. This was 50 years ago. I remember it like it was yesterday. like exactly what was in it. There was even a cassette tape in it because he really couldn't read or write too well because he was dyslexic. And so whenever we heard from my brother, it was through like a cassette tape. Not a cassette tape, like a reel-to-reel.
Reel-to-reel.
The old ones. Yeah.
So you had a lot of emotion, attached to that box too.
Oh, completely. Yeah. And then like he was decorated to the bejesus because he was sort of like a Forrest Gump. Like he just didn't he was the type of guy that reacted first and then thought about what he did later. So he was commentated like to the bejesus, and there was a whole bunch of medals in there. And I remember this part was, my parents had a welcome home party for him, and all my, my cousins and uncles and whatnot. My dad was showing off all the medals on a table one time, and I remember, and I'm 8 years old when this happens. I remember my brother walked in the fucking room. He took all the medals and just winged them into the fireplace, and we didn't see him for 3 days.
Yeah.
And, you could just tell like he was a different dude. But again, he was like, to me, he was my favorite brother.
Yeah.
And I took care of him down to, I was his directive for the VA. I took care of him down to morphine and diapers till he died, and he lived with me. And, it was like just a special bond.
Yeah, it sounds
like it.
Yeah.
Wow. Kevin, did you collect anything as a kid? When did you start collecting stuff?
Right shortly after that, maybe, I can remember climbing the telegraph poles by the old train stations and grabbing all the insulators.
Yep.
You know what I'm talking about? The glass
for
insulators. Sure. And, those things, we just had a bundle of them. And it was like, they weren't easy things to get either because, the trains were whizzing by the poles, and, you really had to reach out to get the good ones, like the dark blue ones. And, that kind of led to like collecting antique bottles. And then really I got into, older, of course, like Hot Wheels and Matchboxes, where like I had a collection that was killer. From there, probably, I didn't really have like a knife collection, but I'd always had a bunch of knives, but they were complete beaters. I mean, we used them a lot.
Right.
Which was, that's the fun part of that stuff.
With the glass stuff, Kevin, was it really about the color and the shape of it and the way it was made, or what was it that attracted you to it?
Yeah, totally. And then also like we got into like, bottles and their progression of, being hand blown. You could date them as to like how far the hand blown came up to the stem and when, something was assembled through a mold. And, we really got into it for a while. And, one thing kind of led to the next. And then I remember getting in. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think with the glass, I mean, those were literally out of reach. They were up above. I remember growing up and seeing some of the old poles still up and around. You'd see some stuck up there.
Oh.
So it's almost like you can't reach that. So someone who got it, had to work for it and be like, look what I got.
He totally did. Yeah, you totally did. And again, that went up to my, my climbing expertise. I was always the guy, the monkey on top. And, I would like unscrew them out of the wood screw, pins that were holding them. And then I would drop them down to my buddies down on the ground.
Huh.
And, we had it down to a science, and we were selling these things for like, a couple bucks a pop. Some would go $5-6 a pop. And we're talking, late 60s, early 70s. That's a shitload of money.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And we'd sell them at antique stores and whatnot. So we always had like an angle. Another thing too was, down by where the station was, there was an old factory, a sticker factory. Like Moon Mullins and Hearst stickers and STP stickers.
Huh.
And all the ones that were like just not really perfect, but really good ones were dumped into these old 55-gallon drums. Ooh. And, we'd just hunt through them like a bunch of cats. Before we would get like thrown out because we'd, always make a mess of the parking lot half the time.
Right.
And, we'd fold them and crease them and get them all cleaned up. And, then we'd sell them at school. And we were making like $20-30 a week. And again, that's like, the equivalent of a couple $100 today. And you're like in, first, second, third grade. And, the vice principal put the kibosh on that because, there's always a couple asshole kids that are throwing them on the school windows and shit, So we always had like to get an angle, but it's like when you have a huge family like that too, there's no money to go around. It wasn't like I got an allowance,
right.
You had to improvise, and that was kind of fun to me. And then I think as I got older, I got into like tank watches, like old antique, like Hamilton tank watches. And,
nice.
I had a collection of unicycles, and then older gotten into cars.
So do you still have all these collections, or have you gotten rid of them as you moved to something else?
I have some, like bits and pieces, like some of my favorites, right. Some of my matchboxes that are like, I'm talking like from the early 50s, in the box still,
Very cool.
Yeah. Most of the, like, I think I still have some of the bottles and insulators too, believe it or not. But again, that was for profit. So it was a collection, I would be like, for an analogy of a knife collector, I'd be like a flipper, not a collector,
Right.
So yeah, that was pretty much it.
So as far as, like you said, big family or whatever, I know you went to college, Kevin. So how did that all happen, and what did you study, and kind of how did you end up down this landscape architect path?
Yeah, it's, again, I guess I got it in my blood from working with my brother early on, and I always liked working outdoors. But oddly enough, I really got into art in, junior high school. And my undergrad, I got a degree in art education.
Oh,
and
interesting.
Yeah. And I had a history minor, but I really got into like ceramics, throwing pots in high school. And I wrestled in high school. I was really good at wrestling, but I was probably a better potter. And, I won like a state championship in pottery.
Check that out.
Yeah. And it was funny. I caught a lot of grief from this, being on the wrestling team,
Oh, yeah.
But then it was funny. It was like all of a sudden, like, I got written up, Kevin got, first and second prize and this. And all of a sudden I got respect from like the heavyweight wrestler. And then all of a sudden the midweights, didn't give me shit no more.
Yeah.
So
funny how that works.
Yeah, it was great. It really was. And
so Kevin, what did your family think of that? I mean, did they see it as like a trade kind of thing, or did certainly lots of families would look at art kind of stuff as sort of like, oh, okay, when are you going to take dues, care about something serious? You know what I mean?
Totally. And, but it got me into college. And again, my dad was really, I think, really proud of me.
Yeah.
My mom was just what you call Black Irish. Everything was like, crack the whip and then, deal with it later. And you know what? It's like, in a lot of ways, like I'm the person I am because of her. I'm tough and I take a lot of shit from people because of her. Like,
right.
Yeah, you think you're giving me shit? You haven't even met my mother. Now, there's two different ways you can take that. My twin brother it didn't end well for him, but it's like, it's the path you take,
Right.
And, I think it just worked to my advantage. Ignorance is bliss. I probably didn't have that business model in my head when I was, going at her, but, it's just, it just sort of evolved. But yeah, I mean, like I got into college really through my art portfolio more than my grades. And, I ended up going to the college in New Jersey, which, in today's world, it's really a tough school to get into. My junior year got really tough. Like I had to really buckle down to graduate. But the whole time I was there, I'd come home and work for a landscape architect that I worked for since high school. And, again, it was always in my blood. And when I finally did the student teaching, I loved teaching, but I was like, there was no fucking way I can do the rest of my life inside.
Right.
I was just like, I'm going to go postal. I just know it. So I quick did a 180 and, went back and started taking a master's degree in horticulture. And, before I even got out of, getting my BA, I started, my business, and it just grew from there. And it was kind of at a great time because this was like the 80s and the whole industry was kind of popping. And the first, this is like, I'm starting a business like pre-skid steer. Bobcats weren't even around.
Yeah.
If they were, not many people had them. You did this with a pickaxe and a wheelbarrow.
Right.
And you just had to, and you just had to like physical work, or, go back and sit on the porch. That's just how it was. But the way I looked at it is like, and it probably, you guys can, compare notes here, is like, I didn't care how hard the work was. The end result was I was like, something happened.
Yeah.
Like I made something.
Right.
In someone's backyard. And it was just like a rush. And then on top of that, I'm getting paid for it.
You basically made art, and
yeah, man.
You did. You made art, and you saw how someone appreciated it, and the fact you got paid for it just seemed like a bonus, I bet.
Yeah, totally. And the fact that I had like an art background, and that just really just kicked in.
So tell us, okay, besides your first experience with that Randall, I know you've got a great story of how you got into some of the custom knives. Do you mind sharing that with us?
Yeah, totally. So during this time, and it was probably right around this time when I was, taking a few master's courses and whatnot, I went camping I live in northern New Jersey, about an hour or two away, less than that, about a little over an hour away is the Catskill Mountains, right over in the New York State line. And we used to go up there right around Woodstock, Kingston area, and the Ashokan reservoirs are just an absolute gorgeous place to camp out. And me and a couple of other buddies, we went up there one weekend, and we're just drinking beer and partying in the woods and walking around at night, having a campfire. And through the woods, we were like hoking around, walking, and we saw this glow, hundreds of yards away. And we're thinking, someone else is over there. We'll party with them. And we're strutting through the woods. And the closer we get, we're like, this isn't really like a fire. And it's like, there's like cabins here. And, all of a sudden we pull up and there's like guys foraging in the woods. And, unbeknownst to us, this was the Ashokan Center of the Arts, which is just one of the coolest places on the planet. And I had no idea what, foraging entailed, or, this is really my indoctrination into really like what a custom knife was and what it takes to do what goes on.
A hell of a one.
Oh man, like talk about setting the bar high.
Yeah. There's a lot of folks that may not know what you're talking about. Explain who was there and.
Okay, so.
Well, and the lay of the land thing, the Ashokan reservoirs are basically a dammed up water supply for New York City, more or less, right?
Correct.
So, beautiful part of New York, outside the city, way out in the wilderness, fantastically beautiful. So that's kind of the setting of this whole thing, right?
It's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous.
And the Ashokan arts thing was kind of established in the late 60s, right?
Yeah, it's been around. Yeah, there's all like, medias of art, not to mention music, dance. There's kids camps there. This place hops.
And it's intertwined with like environmental protection. It's like interwoven. Art and protecting the environment and conservation kind of all wadded into one, right?
Yeah. So, we're there and we're like, I know me and my two buddies were like, wow, this is really something. I mean, like all of a sudden we like got sober. We weren't like really drunk or anything, but we were just like having a fun time. And, our eyes were just like wide open, like, just, it was like electrifying. And unbeknownst to me, I get introduced by, there's a bunch of guys there, but 3 in particular that, were really like kind to us because they knew we were just, we were kind of fresh there, was Don Fogg, Jimmy Fikes, and Jim Schmidt. Yeah. And if you look their names up, they're just the pinnacle of what they do.
Yes.
Right.
They were actually called Three Blind Mice Guild, and they basically, and they're, if you ever met Jimmy Fikes, you'd understand. I mean, the guy's a character, and Jim Schmidt's like this big burly guy, just like one of the kindest men you'd ever meet. And then Don Fogg's kind of like this quiet guy that's like just the master, and like, it's hard to explain because it's like, all right, the first hour I'm watching this and it's like, I compare it to like ballet. I mean, these guys, like, I didn't know my ass from a elbow what was going on, and I still don't. But like when you watch somebody and it's like just like poetry in motion, that's what it was, and they were having such a great time doing what they were doing. And basically, like, these guys started, basically the New England Bladesmith Guild. That's basically what it evolved into.
That'd be amazing to walk into. I mean, could you hear the ringing of anvils like as you're walking to that?
Yeah. I mean, it was, we just knew, like, again, at first we thought it was this fire from, afar. And as we got closer, we were like really getting intrigued. And then we winded up staying there for hours.
I bet.
Very cool.
That is absolutely. Don Fogg is the reason I got deep into Hamones, and the reason I still chase them was his knives.
Yeah. I mean, woulda, coulda, shoulda. I mean, I didn't have a pot to piss in back then, but man, if I only knew.
Right.
I would have vested heavily. Because, I mean, they're like coveted knives, all those 3 guys by their own right. And, number one, just to try to hunt them down now. And then, to purchase them is an investment. But, just the whole aura about the 3 of them to this day kind of haunts me. It's funny too, like just shortly after that, I was, back in school taking a class, and I was taking a horticulture, like a botany class, and I'm reading articles, and my instructor was saying, yeah, this guy, Fred Carter, he makes knives. And again, this is like months after this, and I'm like, what is it with this making knives crap? I'm like, just like another guy. And, I look him up and I'm like, oh my God. I mean, his knives are just incredible too. So it was like one thing led to the next. And that was always in the back of my mind. Like, I got to check this out one day, more about it. So this is like the mid 80s. And then by the time I got out of school and I was, really just getting the ball rolling with my business and, getting married and all that stuff, it's like early 90s, I found out that there was a knife show in New York, of all places. And I went to the knife show, and it was just like, I walked in there and it was like, you're just like a little kid going to FEO Schwartz. I mean, you just lose your mind.
Right.
I mean, you really do. It's like you can't think straight. And it still happens to me today when I walk into a knife show. It's like getting better because like I go in and I just try to discipline myself, but it's almost impossible.
Right. Right.
And it's weird. It's like, I've collected cars. I've collected other things. I go to car shows. I'm more centered. I go into a knife show and I'm just, it's like you can't even talk to me. I don't know what it is. You know what I'm saying? It's a weird thing, but
that's cool. That's called passion, my man.
It totally is. It's like almost too much. You know, my heart's beating. I'm sweating. It's fucking January in Jersey City. It's like, what's going, you know, or November. It's like.
So was the New York show the first big, like, real knife show that you went to?
It was. Yeah. I went to a couple little like neighborhood ones and stuff. And the New York one, I went to the one in, I think, 92 or 3. I think I still have the brochure from it too. And that got the ball rolling because I got, in like a couple of years between, like, say 92 and 95, I got my first custom actually from a maker was Bob Lum.
Nice.
And then, which I still have, and a letter. I'm going to have to put it together and get a picture on, you know, on the Facebook page. And then a Bob Loveless, like later on, a couple years later. And I knew the Bob Loveless story is kind of funny. It was right around when Seinfeld came out, you know, with the Soup Nazi episode. And it was forever in my head about this, even though I was thinking about this today. I was, you know, just being, you know, patient, and he was talking to somebody before me, and this guy just fucking pissed off Loveless. And, you know, I don't think it took much to get Bob's blood going. And, you know, I'm the next guy in line, and I'm like, should I just walk away or what? You know?
Right.
And I think just because I was like, you know, I kept my composure and I was calm and cool, I got a knife out of the whole thing. And that was my second knife, was a Bob Loveless Hunter. So again, you know, between that and a Shokin, I'm like, man, the bar's set high here. Like, you know, how am I going to beat this? And
so your second knife was a Loveless. What was the first one?
A Bob Lum Tanto.
Oh, wow. Wow. Where do you go from there?
Down. Exactly.
I know.
Did you say it was stag handle, Kevin?
Stag handle. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Armor piercing point. It's got some red undies.
You still have it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely gonna have to see pictures of these two if you still got both of them.
Yeah, totally. So with all this going on, and like my business was like, you know, being in the business just like you guys, it's like, you know, 80, 90 hours a week didn't mean much. You know, it was just, that was the way it is. I mean, and I was like getting to the point where I was getting like better work, bigger work, getting a name for myself. I happened to get one of my jobs in like Home and Garden magazine. And the next thing you know, you're like, you know, you're the best thing since sliced bread for like 15 minutes, you know, but all of a sudden I said to myself, look, I gotta like I'm really a horrible multitasker, as you know me. And, I can barely walk and chew gum, but I can do both really good, just not at the same time. So I just decided to like lay off the knife thing for a little bit because I wanted to get my priorities straight. But I always kind of kept my eyes on it, but I didn't really do many more shows and didn't really invest because I didn't want to do it half-assed, you know?
Right.
And it's kind of funny because you guys, everybody now pretty much knows my wife, Judy.
Yep.
She's got a better collection than most men that are going to listen to this. She owns a ceramic teaching studio and a gallery. The gallery was a 1924 Pullman car. And in the gallery was like really high-end fine arts and crafts, like, you know, wood boxes, jewelry, blown glass, stuff like that. And, you know, her ceramics.
Very cool.
And we would go a couple times a year to the trade shows for like buying purchases, you know, for the gallery. And I would go with her. And, you know, I'd look around, and a lot of like her day was spent like buying jewelry. And I'm like, Jude, I'd rather stick fucking toothpicks in my eyeballs and look at jewelry. I just can't do this no more. So it's just like, all right, go over there. There's, Santa Fe Stoneworks, and there's a Spyderco dealer, and they'd have all their like high end stuff, and, then I would ask her like, hey, can we buy some of this stuff for the gallery? So it was really cool. It's like, my wife's let me buy knives for her gallery. So it was just really kind of a neat thing, that.
Don't the magicians call that, I'm sorry, the prestige?
And then,
don't look what's happening in this hand while I'm buying the jewelry in the other hand.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you got that.
I was thinking she was sending him to slaughter. Like, hey, Kevin, why don't you go over there and buy some knives?
Yes. So like, and she was really into it too. Like I'd pick out some stuff and she'd be like, wow, I really like this, and we, she'd let me keep one, it's like that. No, the rest of them's got to go in the showcase, and, so that, again, that kind of like always kept my hand in it. And through buying like, Benchmades and Spydercos and stuff like that, you got to see like what some of the custom makers were making, because they had, they were being asked, to make some of their models. And that's kind of how I first really recognized who Michael Walker was. Because Spyderco had a Spyderco Clotesley, which was like a Clotesley is the name. I don't know if you ever. It's
Clotesley
small,
or Clotesley. I'm not sure which one, but I know the company you're talking about. They did at least 3 different designs by Michael.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And the first one that they did with him, I believe, was carbon fiber. It was the C22 model, which are like next to impossible to get these days. And I had seen a picture of that, because the dealer had it. And, so it was like all these things like just kept coming back to me on the custom end. And then finally, I still waited and got all my ducks in a row and, got a mortgage paid off. And then I said, all right, it's time to get back in here. And it's interesting because in some ways it's the same, in some ways it's different. The knife world today. It's faster. It's, in some ways, I'm kind of a personal type person, like it takes a lot for me to, my kid almost had to force me to get on like Facebook and Instagram and all that crap, but it's a necessary evil in the knife world today,
I'm very aware.
Right.
Yeah. And I definitely have a love-hate relationship with it. But, especially like on the tactical end, I knew that was kind of just something I had to do. And I really wanted to reach out and see everything because when I first started, as far as like the tactical makers that I saw at the Roosevelt show was, Bob Terzola. It was just a different world, I mean, a lot of fixed blades, a lot of bladesmiths, a lot of, art knives, so coming back into it, it's like, wow, where have I been? It's like, as much as I thought I had my hand and my eyes on it, I didn't. It was, I don't want to say like starting over, but man, it was branched out.
Yeah. So Kevin, when your first New York show was actually when the show was in the city, right?
Yes.
And so that was early 90s time frame.
Yep. Like 93.
Okay. And then you described sort of going out to the fringe of it and kind of touching knife stuff through Judy's studio for a while, kind of in parallel, right?
Yes.
And then coming back to it. When was the come back to it kind of time frame, just for reference?
I want to say like 10 years ago, like, know, realistically, as far as like, looking and see like, the tactical end of it.
Right.
And interesting enough, our buddy, Vince at Fort Henry Custom Knives, I just happened to just make some phone calls and, he really gave me like a good, 101 of, tactical and what's going on. Vince is a great guy.
Very much.
has a lot of patience. We're like two different worlds. I'm like from New York talking 90 miles an hour. And, Vince is just, real calm, cool, collective, but we seem to hit it off well. And, from there, it just kind of like branched out.
Yeah.
But then, going to shows was so much different. It's like you're going to shows and like there's all these lotteries. And I'm like, what the fuck's a lottery? It's like, I got money here, take it, And, it's just, again, it was just like, as much as it was the same and it was, I felt the same, my blood was rushing through me a mile a minute. It was different. And I had to like, sort of, get on the learning curve for a bit. But what's cool about the tacticals is like, I felt like Rodney Dangerfield in like Caddyshack in the pro shop. Like, here, I'll take one of these and four of these. And, like I just wanted to try everything and handle everything. So like, as much as I was away for it, I kind of made up the time because I put a lot into it.
Right.
And I found out like quickly, like what I liked and didn't like. And what's great about that too is like, it sort of added to my stable as to what I liked. But interestingly enough is like, I've gone like, full 360 here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just hard to take a Lum out of my hands. It's hard to take a Loveless out of my, you know what I'm saying? Like the ones that I had the gut instinct, they're still on top of the dog pile.
Yep. So that's an interesting kind of point to hit. So I think there's a lot of, it's not hard to draw the line between Lum or even Loveless, really, even though Loveless is more traditional, but it's really not hard to draw the line between Bob Lum, his style and what he was doing, and the tactical world, just because the tactical makers, so many of them took inspiration from some of Bob's features or designs or shapes, right?
Totally.
And so you just kind of mentioned it when you bought that first Lum and that first Loveless, it was really just the shape and design kind of stuff that grabbed you about it.
Completely. And then also just like, if you ever met Bob Lum, I mean, he's just, there's something about the dude.
Yeah.
We kind of I only met him a couple of times, but like, I felt like I knew him for forever. Just like a gentleman in every aspect, and like sorely missed because like he was just like, you could tell no matter what that guy did, he was such an asset to the community of whatever he was.
Yeah.
And that kind of just, kind of hit my soul.
Yeah.
Not to mention he just makes a kick-ass knife.
Right. Right. So when you kind of circle back around, like you described, and got into the tactical thing, I mean, it's 10 or 15 years later, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And is it the same kind of thing that draws you into tactical? Like, hey, I really like whatever that is. I don't know who made that, or, one of the cool parts about coming at those things, like when I first started looking, like kind of spiraling off into the slip joint world, the traditional slip joint style.
Yeah.
I didn't really know anything about the makers. I mean, I knew Tony Bowes or whatever, right? But I mean, I didn't know anybody else. So I just went around and looked at stuff and said, hey, I like that. And, talk to the maker. And if the maker wasn't a giant douche, then I'm in, right? I mean, I like it. He's doing clean work. I like that. And sometimes you kind of, it's no mistake sometimes the people that you find and come across, or, that you decide you like their work because it's just good design.
Totally.
I think that's a good way to find knives right there, because without outside influence, you're not being told what you're supposed to like. You're finding what you really like.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
It's funny that you bring that up, Mark, because it's like, I'm definitely an oddball at this. I don't like, I correlate this to like the way I lived my life, and like, even like the sport that I picked, like wrestling. It's like, you're in a group, but you're an individual. Like you have your own stats. And I don't know if that's like the little man's disease in me. Like, fuck it. I'm working a lot harder than you bastards. And, if we're going to go down, I'm going to go down my way, and maybe my upbringing, all that stuff. So like, you know, how I compare that to my life collection is like, I don't give a rat's ass what anybody else likes.
Right.
You know, it's like, but you know, trust me, I'm game to like listen, and you know, I got no problem, you know, hanging around with the gang that, you know, collects 6 makers and that's it, you know, because I might like 3 of them, you know, the makers.
Right.
But again, at the end of the day, like I worked too hard for my money, and I don't want like regrets. If the regrets are my regrets, it's different than like, you know, peer pressure. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just,
but you're not talking monetary regrets. You're talking about regrets as in a design or investing in a piece that you thought was, you know, for you, not for the money.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll definitely like listen to anybody's, you know, wrath about stuff. But at the end of the day, like it has to just, the goal for me, even in like my business, is like less is more. Like you can always dress up a pig. Does that make sense to you guys? Like,
very much.
That's always been my business model. And trust me, you know, it's like sometimes you got to dress up a pig to get paid, you know, like I'm talking about my business. So again, it's like, I don't want to be sold by anybody else's, you know, their desires. And again, like I guess maybe I'm going off on a tangent here, but you know, it's like when I was first collecting knives, the atmosphere was different than it is today. There's more of like a different camaraderie to it.
Yeah.
At least that's what I see.
Well, Kevin, one of the things of advice that I've always said to people is to collect what you like, and you'll never be disappointed in your collection. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Completely. Yeah.
You know, don't look at it as an investment or any of that, but just collect what you like.
It's absolutely, because you know, there's just always seems to be more clarity, you know, when you do it that way.
I think it's really interesting that, you know, the reality is that everybody comes at this stuff a different way. And, you know, we talk all the time on the show about everybody's got their own version of the story. And I think that's one of the really interesting things for people to hear. And one of the reasons I like talking to Kevin about knives or talking to Judy about knives is that I think they are coming at it from an art appreciation perspective more than, you know, some other different perspectives. Because again, everybody's got their own thing. Some people love the you know, hey, so-and-so says it's cool and he's my friend and that makes it cool to me. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Nope. I mean, that's okay for people like stuff that way. That's what makes the world turn. And what I think is really fun and interesting about Kevin and Judy is that they're coming at it from I like that shape or design or whatever. And yeah, okay, the other piece has to be there too, right? You don't want to own pieces from people that you don't like or that you don't respect or that treat you poorly or something. But at the same time, the first step is, do I like that, right? Does it appeal to me?
It should be the first step.
Yeah, well.
In my head. And it, like you said, it doesn't work for everybody that way. But yeah, I think that's a very pure way of collecting. I think Kevin's definitely doing it right.
Well, no, man, I think everybody has that moment where the knife speaks to them in one way or another. Even if the knife's saying, hey, your buddy Tom said this shit's cool, you could suck up to him by getting it. That's knife's still fucking speaking to you.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's totally true. Yeah. For me, it's like too, I have to like kind of put it in my hand. And, you know, it's like a little kid sleeping with his football for a little bit. You know, it's like knives. Some knives have like, I automatically like, and then man, they just grow on me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's almost hard to describe how a couple of knives have just been like, you know, I'll just sit there and like look at it. I mean, it's crazy.
I think everyone here probably understands that feeling, and probably a lot of people listening have felt at least one or two knives they picked up and had the exact same feeling.
Yeah.
And if not, get to a show.
Another part of it is like, and I tell the younger guys too, and maybe it's because I have the advantage that, I was in it a ways ago, but like, I'll see a knife either through a publication or I'll hear about it through a show or see it at a show. And then, the joy of collecting too is to hunt it down. It's like, I've literally like felt like I was a private eye, for years trying to find some of these knives that I've got. And, one of my Morans, I knew that it was built for the first AKI show. Now, this is like early 80s when it was in Reno. And I heard through a person, and this is rumors. You don't even know if it's true, and then you find out like, oh man, this guy's got it. Okay. And then you got to find out this guy's like 85 years old and he doesn't have a cell phone. So you got to find his address. So you got to write him a letter. Then you got to see if he's going to, just even give you the time of day. Like all these things are cumulative to getting that knife. And that's why I look at that knife and I gawk at it. Cause it's like, the story behind it.
Right.
Like all those things really like, I don't know, maybe I'm just a sentimental fool, but it's like, that knife is earned.
Yeah.
And it has a story to it now that's, I'm involved in it.
Right.
That's really cool.
It's super cool. And it's a different perspective than sometimes people have. Sometimes people are like, I want to own one of Michael's knives and one of the ways to get one, or probably the easiest way to get one, is to hit in a lottery. Maybe the only way, but the other way is to bid on it if it's a bid piece and you really like it. But I think at the risk of my old curmudgeon guy showing through, people in many cases today, and this could be a difference that goes back to the scene differences that you mentioned earlier, Kevin, between early 90s time frame and today, is if I can't have it right now, you know what I mean, at table price, then okay, I'm out. Right. The chase piece isn't as much there today. It doesn't feel like, and part of that I think is just because, when I have a computer at my fingertips all day long or in my pocket that can tell me anything I would ever possibly need to know.
Yeah, totally.
Why would I go chase something around for months and months and months and write guys letters and bug them or whatever? So it's a different perspective, right?
Totally. And again, it's like, I wouldn't do it with, you can't do it with every piece.
Right. But
it's like, it's kind of like the mystery to some of these knives and bringing them back. A lot of these, some of these knives are like, I'm going to get one this Thursday and I will post it up on your page. But you don't want to talk about, hen's teeth. I mean, I heard about this thing. I didn't even know if it was alive and it is. And I got it. And it's like, it's just a rush to, get from A to Z on these things.
Oh, the thrill of the hunt. Hell yeah.
Oh man, it's like, it's unbelievable. And, just a lot of these knives that I'm going after have been in, wealthy man's collections for 40 years. And, they're starting, some of these guys are starting to pass and they're starting to leak out. And now, I'm just like chewing at the bit. It's like, man, I heard about that knife and, I saw it in Points of Interest book or whatever. And, I'm just dying for some, Don Fogg Kamals to come out because they're impossible to find.
Those are great books, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh man, they're just a wealth of knowledge.
These are the Point of Interest books. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes. Yeah. The Point of there's 4 of them. Actually, I think there's 5.
There's 5.
Yes, 5.
For some reason, number 3 was like the most expensive, and I have no idea why.
Yeah, you're right. I think I paid like 3 times as much.
Yeah. I feel like you're going after like almost the legendary knives right now. You kind of hit the tactical, you hit some of the greats before, hit the tactical, hit some art knives, and now you're kind of circling back to these sort of, like I said, legendary kind of knives from the books and stuff we saw you know.
Yeah, totally. And I
Which
mean,
is pretty awesome.
If you can find, you know, I happened to find just a couple this year. You know, it was like where one led to the next one because they were in the same collection, and you know, the person took a shine to me or whatever, you know, and they know I'm not going to flip it, which is really important to a lot of people.
Right.
And also it's like, well, what's the other body of your collection? You know,
I mean, if,
so
if it's one of these special pieces that means something to you, you want it to go to someone that it's going to mean something to.
correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, you don't want to let someone else profiteer off you.
Absolutely. This particular knife, it's actually this knife I'm talking about is a Michael Walker fixed blade.
Yeah.
Now,
the
first 10 knives that Michael Walker made were fixed blades. They were like, you know, you tear, you know, just simple hunters. I think it was in January 1980, he decided he was going to be a knife maker. And he makes these knives. They're, you know, the best that he could make at the time, and they're fixed blades, and he brings them to Red River Trading Post. And the guy that owned the place, Buchanan, says, you know, Mike, you got to make me sheaths. So, you know, Mike goes and get a tandy leather, you know, package and makes the sheaths and come back and says, making sheaths sucks. I don't want to do this no more. Which I think you guys can all. Yeah. So that was the extent of Mike Walker's fixed blades, except for this one. And about, I'd say, somewhere in the 80s, I don't have the exact date. I'm going to guess like mid 80s. A really good collector, you know, coaxed them into making a fixed blade. And this is it. And it's
cool.
It's a San Francisco style Bowie that his wife engraved. It has, you know, a mammoth handle that's sculpted. It's just, you know, I'm going to be buried with this one, or it's going to go into a museum.
Yeah.
But, you know, again, it's like the story, you know, like it's the whole package. It's not just a knife. Of course, you know, it's like, you know, again, the bar is set high here on who I'm talking about, and just the elements of everything put together. That to me is like, you know, I feel like I'm a collector when I'm nailing something like this.
Yeah.
Real collector. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're hitting
And again,
it
it's like, this thing was so crazy that, you know, we couldn't even come really to well, what's the value of this thing?
Yeah.
You know, there's no comps on this thing. So again, you know, I think it just helps that, you know, because I feel this way so deeply that, you know, I got it.
Well, it's one thing to like hand another collector a knife from your collection and be like, check it out. But it's a whole different story to be able to hand them the knife and have the story of everything about that knife to go with it. And that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. It's just, the provenance, everything was just, it's just like, you know, my heart's beating right now talking about it. You know, it's like, I just can't wait to see this thing.
Well, that's, you know, with this great example of people will use the term grail, right? And and this is kind of, to me, what really fits with that kind of description, right? Where it's a very special onesie kind of piece. It's something you got to chase for a long time, and it's not a necessarily a how many dollars do I have to throw your direction before you'll let this go necessarily, right? Like you said, there's more of like a custodial aspect
completely
of owning the knife. And that's very cool.
You know, I'd still say that, you know, some of my knives that are like in the high five figures compared to some of my knives that are like, you know, like my Bob Lum that I'm talking to you, I'll put those head to head. The money's got nothing to do with it. You know, I still get like the same rush from either one of them.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's unbelievable too. It's like, and that's kind of secures my ideology of it. Like, yeah, it's not about the money. It's like, I can't be bored on this, and I'm talking to myself about this,
Right.
It's like, yeah, who gives a shit? That I don't care. It's like that thing is still doing it for me,
Yeah. So what do you think, Kevin? You mentioned, and we've kind of tiptoed around this a little bit, that difference between your first foray into customs and then when you got back into it with tacticals in the early mid 2000s time frame. We talked about the difference in the scene and what the feel was like and kind of what people were about in the knife collecting thing. You want to give some thoughts on what's different between the two and why you think it might happen?
You brought up the word curmudgeon. Okay.
Right.
I felt like I was, what's that guy in Shawshank Redemption? He gets out of jail. He's like, man, the world went and got really fast. Brooks, I'm
Right.
like, fucking Jesus, man. Like, I just, and again, I think it's just the social climate. I'll compare this, a good comparison, Mark, is like when I started my business and, the ball started rolling, a lot of my clientele was like Wall Street bankers.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like where I live. And they're like motherfuckers to work for. But, that being said, these guys back in the 80s, you cross your T's, you dot your I's, and, it's like a handshake. I don't draw up a lot of contracts because I just trust people. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
And now, fast forward, and it's like I'm comparing this to the knife world too. It's like, I'm working for their kids or, the next generation of Wall Street bankers. I got to do twice as much two-dimensional work with these guys, and the sun sets and then the sun rises, and it's like we never had this discussion.
Yeah.
And again, it's the social climate. I'm not blaming anybody. It's just how shit's run these days. And I kind of see that in the climate of today's knife world too.
Yeah.
And I think, that's my frustration is like, sometimes like, I see these, I see these other collectors and I'm like, man, just like, let the smoke clear for a while. It's like,
Yeah.
Get to appreciate that knife.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Breathe for a second and look at it and actually see what you got. Don't just see
And it's
what
like,
it could be.
I don't want to, I can't, I can get on my soapbox and cry all I want about it, but that's, I see it with my own kid, like how, you have all these tools with social media and, all this stuff is like reflective and it bounces off of you and then you become a part of it.
Right.
And I think we should just remind ourselves like, just go sit in the woods for a while, and maybe Don Fogg will come. No, but, you know what I'm saying? It's like, I feel like a lot of people don't even appreciate it and it's gone already.
Yeah.
And, that to me is not collecting.
No.
It seems like a lot of people are always on the search for the next thing.
Yeah. Like what's, and yeah, you're so true, Tom. It's like, like what, I just got it because it's like right off his bench. Like,
well,
really, man?
There's like a very, almost a short attention span. It's like, okay, so a new knife gets a bunch of likes on a social media. But as soon as those likes kind of start dropping, it's like, okay, maybe I need to move this piece. And if you look at it that way, then maybe you bought it for the wrong reasons. And that's not to say it's bad or whatever, but for me, if you're more worried about getting the likes and stuff like that, than appreciating it for the knife itself, then look at why you bought it in the first place.
I'm sure you guys have a tough time with this too, because it's like, if you work with your hands, you sort of, it's a different feeling. You know what I'm saying? It's like that material came off of my hands and I built it. And I feel the same way with my work. It's like I try balls to the wall trying to give, I can have a son of a bitch that I'm working for and I'm still going to try to do my best work. because it's like, it's mine.
Right. It's yours. Even if he's an ass, it's yours at the end.
Absolutely. And, if you start marginalizing that, then you don't give a crap. And, like collectors need to have like empathy about all that too. And you'll just have a deeper appreciation, rather than just like, well, I got to flip it because I'll, make max profit or, whatever. It's like, I hate to bring up the money thing, but that's certainly a part of it because, there's a lot of money in
very
this.
much.
Depending on whether, a young kid that's got a $500 knife is, just, that money is just as important to him as, 10,000 to me or whatever, like it doesn't, you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's all relative.
Right.
But just sit back and think about what you're doing. I just think people will get a more appreciation about it too. And another thing that can kind of irk me too is, like when people, nail you on Instagram or something like that, and they want to bro you and they want to get a knife out of you, that's cool. I mean, it's just another way of doing it, but it's like,
right.
I've had people like do that and it's like all of a sudden they have amnesia. Like, I didn't say that, or, I'm saying like, okay, that's one deal. And again, that's
right.
not just me talking. I know, everybody has a horror story about this crap. If you confront a person and you want to make a deal and it's a contract, it's a binding of words. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You didn't have a lawyer involved or whatever, but you know what you fucking said. And, again, it's like, it's not just about that one deal. It's about the integrity of the whole thing.
Yep, exactly.
It's and I try to get that across to people. It's like, I'm not really pissed at, the deal went south or whatever. It's about, why the fuck are we doing this?
Right, right.
And if you have 95 guys doing a really good job, and that's probably is the ratio, and then you have, 5 cocksuckers just trying to grease their own pockets.
It starts to break down the system.
It completely does.
Yeah.
It's like it's like I always say to my kid, you can do all the right things and do one screw up, and people are going to remember that screw up.
It's definitely, it kind of goes back to the difference in the concept, where sometimes I think people aren't, and I said this in an earlier episode, maybe more than once, sometimes I think people aren't really honest with themselves about what they're doing. And this starts to get off into psychobabble, but maybe they're not really being honest with themselves about what they're doing. They'll say the right words. They hear the right words. They see the conversation on social media about how it's some kind of, brotherhood and apple pie kind of scene. And then, they're an asshole. So, I mean, or, you know what I mean? Or yeah. they'll do exactly what we talked about, which is collect and value. I don't value my collection on what I think social media thinks of my collection. Right. But I know a lot of people do. And
it's shallow, man. It's shallow. And it's like,
I think it is. I feel it's indictive to say it, but yeah, I think it kind of is. And whether it's your collection or your vacation with your family or the dinner you just had, or, you know what I mean? It kind of goes back to the whole weird, I'm going to use the word disease as a derogatory thing, but disease of what social media does, right? Where it's about, I'm going to be cooler or better than everybody else. Look at me, what I have and what you don't. And that just pollutes the whole thing, I think.
But on the other side, it also drives the market, and that's kind of the bad and good of this whole thing.
Yeah,
I don't like it. I've often said if you couldn't post this on the internet, if you couldn't show anybody, would you still want it? And if the answer is no, then you're probably buying it for the wrong reasons. But at the same time, it also makes this whole thing run, which is kind of crazy.
I don't know if it's for the wrong reason. I don't know. I mean, it's whatever makes you happy. If that's what makes you happy, do it.
That's why I kind of pump the brakes a little when I describe it, Tom. It feels not worth it to me, dishonest. But
I agree, Tom, what you just said. Like, if it makes you happy, do it. but do it with honor and integrity.
Yeah,
don't
for sure.
don't like, piss on my leg and tell me it's fucking raining. It's like,
Yeah,
because it's just like what you guys just said. It's like, what you did. Just because your buddies are telling you it's cool, it ain't cool. And that's like, again, it's like, I'm always looking to see if something can get better. The knife world in general is, really, there's a lot of deep, honorable people here.
Yeah.
It's just like there's always a couple of cats that come out of the bag. It's like, really, man?
But the percentages are getting big. The larger this industry is getting, the collecting, the more we're seeing these kind of bad apples that do these types of things. And the shitty part is it drives good collectors away. And it sucks. It does. And I hate seeing that. And,
a couple times I'll admit, like, I'm just like, man, it's like, I can't believe that just happened.
Right.
But then you wake up and you say, you know what? Again, I'll repeat myself, but it's like, 9 out of 10 people, like, again, I've been in the car crowd and, there's sleazy people everywhere for the most part. And I guess maybe I just want perfection here, and I know that's the reality of that. It's hard, and especially in this day and age, but, it's the ones that are bad are really bad.
Well, to me, it's the disingenuous aspect of it, where, like when the stuff I've collected, or done, right, like with competitive shooting thing, or even with car stuff or motorcycle stuff, there's not like when I was doing motorcycle stuff with Ducatis or whatever, it wasn't. When I would go do Ducati things or go to track days or whatever, there wasn't this overriding community brotherhood thing, right? There was no umbrella of that around it. Whereas with this thing, there was, maybe wanted to be, still kind of is. And then that's where the train's off the tracks, I think, I use the word disingenuous, right? Where it's like, it's not very honest, and you can't say, oh, it's about my friends and it's about brotherhood. Now it's about whatever. And it's about the community, and then sticking a knife in a motherfucker, right? That's not cool.
Yeah.
So,
and I think too, Mark, that's a good point, is like, and I'm kind of like going back to like how I ran my show. Like I started collecting and I knew this was going to be like a heroin addiction, like it just kind of takes over, and I kind of like sat back and got my priorities straight. And I said this to a lot of young kids. I'm like, man, if you're just like flipping a knife to pay your rent so you can buy another knife, like, man, just slow up, wait, just give it some time.
Right.
And it's, in the long run, it'll pay off.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that wraps up Curmudgeon Hour on Mark the Maker. Well, old guys complaining about stuff hour. So Sean, you want to take it from here and take us in a little bit different direction?
Yeah. Kevin, let me ask you, what initially draws you to a knife? What's the thing that consistently speaks to you in the knives you really enjoy?
A lot of it too is, I can kind of correlate it to, like what I do for a living is like form and function. If I see a form there's a great expression in our household here. My wife says it more than me, is like, I like it because it's different. If something's got sexy lines to it, if it's, intentionally badass, it's like, I just want to go look at the thing. And a lot of times it's, nowadays on the internet but I do try to get to a lot of shows, look at a lot of publications, look at a lot of old publications, and then take it from there, the 2-dimensional into the 3-dimensional. That's kind of like, it's just kind of like doing my homework with a lot of this stuff. It gets me excited every time, and rarely do I have a letdown.
Right.
Maybe because I just like so many knives. And again, like, my collection is like, a lot of guys just make fun of it, like a lot of the younger guys. And that's cool because it's like, I'm all over the board. I like a little bit of everything.
Who has made fun of your collection?
Yeah, no shit.
but like probably in a good way, because they can't figure me out because I'm not like, I'm not, my business model is not directed towards, again, like 10 makers. It's like,
Kevin, you mentioned something just now, and it kind of resonated with me. Do you find that the research and the hunt is almost as fun as the collection?
50-50. Yep, totally. I just, I totally get off on, you just feel like a little kid going to see Santa Claus. It's like you have this wish list and then you just go, that's part of the work. It's just so much more fun, the end result.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's like you've got a knife that that I've been hunting for, that I've been, going for. And it's that exciting type of story. I know where it's been. I know where it's at. You know where this knife has been this whole time. And it's an exciting part of collecting.
Yep. Absolutely.
And at this point, I don't care because I know it's in great hands. So, someday I might find that knife down the road. Maybe not, but it's part of the excitement of it.
And that's, like,
what knife?
It's a
secret.
No, it's the Don Fogg, Gilbreth,
Butterbean.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's like 4 or 5 of them that, Don Fogg made with Randall Gilbreth, and they at the time, I think Don was living in Alabama, close to Randall, and I believe the story goes they got the name Butterbean from the wrestler fighter Butterbean. That guy used to work out in the same gym as Don Fogg,
I didn't know
it's
that.
just kind of a rounded, the shape of it. It's kind of like bulbous, but yeah, and it's like I have similar stories like that, Mike, too. It's like, I have a list of knives that are like on my hunt, and I know going into this, I'm not going to find most of them. but that's okay.
You move on to the next and keep it on your list. It's exciting.
Yeah, totally. It's like, again, it's like a lot of like detective work almost. That's how I look at it. It's like, I don't seem to get frustrated about it, because it's like, it's part of the collection.
Well, you go in it with the right head of you don't own it and you don't have to own it. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
Yep, totally.
Sometimes, like Michael said earlier, sometimes it's actually almost as cool to know the person that does own it, and especially if it's someone that's your friend or that you like or that you get along with or that really likes it for cool or interesting reasons, right? Sometimes to me that makes it almost as cool as having it myself.
Very much.
Yeah.
There's, like, again, like I sort of divide some of like my to-do list and my wish list, and some of them are like, mechanical knives, like, mechanical meaning like a Michael Walker, like, he's got his D-lock, his blade lock. I mean, that guy's got more locks than, I got hair on my head. I mean, I don't know how he just keeps pulling a rabbit out of the hat. I mean, it blows your mind. But, prior to, Michael, inventing the liner lock and then all these locks, there was guys like Bob Hayes and Ron Richards, they had mechanisms on their knives too. And, I try to go after those knives, but a lot of times those knives are like just cemented into collections where a guy will have like, some of these guys didn't make a lot of knives. And, some of these collectors will have like 25 of them.
Right.
And it's like, I almost like, there's a part of me that like, a normal greedy human would be like, come on, man, you can give one of these up. But it's like, I don't want to take it from him because it's like, that's like a body. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and I know he worked his whole fucking life for that. I mean, he worked, I got a lot of time vested into it. It ain't nothing compared to what he's got.
Well, it's almost like,
go ahead.
I was going to say, it's almost like taking one plank off of a Chris Craft. It's not
completely, it's just like, it's like, I don't even want to ask him. It's like,
Yeah.
if the time comes and, maybe he is at the end of his life or, like he passes and, then it opens up, then I'll get it. But it's, I rarely ask someone like, hey man, like, how about one for the cause here? But it just, again, like, I think again, it's like, it's just getting like a deeper appreciation of all this. It's like, man, that's cool. Like that guy did it right. There's a lot of sweat equity into that.
I mean, don't you feel like today, like the term grail is misused a lot?
I don't know if I've ever used it.
but I mean in the industry, I mean everybody's
completely
got a grail or whatever, and if you actually look up the definition, it means you're earnestly, trying to get something and pursuing it, and these knives that you're describing are you may not ever be able to get them,
Right.
To me, that's a true grail.
It's you're right, totally. I mean, that's just the way I look at it. And if by some chance it comes to me, then awesome. I guess it's meant to be. But by the same token, I know so many of these knives are in such good hands. A lot of these guys treat these things like museums, and so they should.
Yeah, and it's okay.
They're part of like Americana too. At this point, they're getting that, that patina on them. That they are deservingly belong on a different shelf, so to speak.
And it's okay that we don't see them. I think sometimes people get upset that something, a knife goes away. A knife gets bought and it goes into a collection. You don't see it, and that's okay. We don't.
Yeah,
that's his right. That person's right to keep it how they want and enjoy it how they want. It's their knife.
Yep. Because I know that they really enjoy it.
Yeah.
And that's cool.
And as a maker, it brings me joy, just knowing that it goes to someone that is appreciating it. And there's many ways to appreciate a knife, whether it's using or just looking at it. It doesn't have to be used.
Yeah. It's funny. It's like, some of the younger guys are like, you use that knife? That knife's like worth $4,000. But, it's like some knives I just like one of Sean's knives I put in my pocket and I've beaten the living piss out of it. And it's like, I know I'm going to keep the thing, and I had Jody Muller engrave it. I mean, it's just funny how you handle certain knives.
Oh man, that's the fanciest toolbox knife going. I'll tell you that.
that thing's been dropped out of a tree onto a T11 steel flatbed. I mean, it's just like it's like a Timex watch. And I have a Tom Crine Hydra that I actually gave to my buddy. It was stuck in a 5-gallon bucket for like 6 years, and we used it for like cutting burlap and hemp. And and it's like every once in a while you just have to throw a good knife in there and beat it up. And respect it. I respect it even more. And
some honest patina.
Yeah, it totally is. So I do have my salvage yard as well. It's funny. Me and Judy are building a house out in Vermont. We're building like a barn house, and because I've incriminated her into the knife world too. There's going to be a whole room that is just a gallery of knives.
Awesome.
And talking about like. We have some cabinets picked out, and I'm really stoked to do this.
Very cool.
It's actually part of the whole design. It was funny. It's a Leeds green construction house. It's going to have like an R value of 140. The walls are like 2 foot thick. I mean, it's crazy, but it's like something we've always wanted to do. And you kind of need it up there. It's pretty cold. But you'll get a kick out of this. Like, when we started looking for property, the property overlooks like the Adirondacks and Lake Champlain. It's beautiful. And I hope you guys all get up there because there's going to be a studio in the basement. And, we can all sit and sling pots. Yeah.
Yeah,
so
there you go.
I went in, I found like a couple of these houses that like, man, I really like this guy's style. He's like clean. He has his own signature. So I find this architect, and, I find out he lives the next town up from where we're bought the property. And first thing I did is I walked into his office with a knife in my hand. And I'm like, I just want to see how this guy feels about this.
I like it. I like it a lot.
I flicked out the knife, and there, my architect is great. His name is Steven Salin. It's him and his wife, and he is like the quintessential egghead. He's the opposite of me. He's an MIT graduate. He did his post work at Carnegie Mellon. Little do I know, he's like, he's at the top of the food chain at Green Construction. Nice. So. Yeah, just another walked into shit, and I slapped down the knife on his drawing table, and I'm like, I want to build my house around this. And he just looks at me like, where did this psychopath come from, So,
just out of curiosity, what knife was that?
It was a Bob Lum Stalker presentation grade integral bolsters. It's actually the knife that John Newcomb has on top of his website. eBoss Hoss.
Yeah.
One. Yeah.
So you
which is one of my favorite.
Pointed a stalker at a guy. Yeah. Told him to make you a house. Nice.
And
very subtle approach.
Uh-huh.
And he's a really passive dude, and he completely dug it, And so there's a whole room upstairs that's going to be donated towards the showcases.
Very cool.
Let's talk about some of those knives. Let's get to some of these badasses.
Yeah, so I'll start with one of my absolute favorite knives is, I don't have a favorite. I can't do it. I've tried many times. I can't do it. But my ST24 Bill Moran, the one I have, I think Nick Rolfe was over for dinner some months back, big strapping dude, fan of the show. He picks it up and he's like, it's the same look that everyone else has. It's like it defies gravity. Yeah. The thing's a monster and it's light as a feather. It's such a balanced knife. That alone is whimsical in itself. Not to mention, it's a Bill Moran.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just the blade, the dimensions it's one of the bigger ones. It's about 17 and a half inches in total length, but it's, the curvature, and you guys know, it's you can make the same model 50 times over, but one stands out why is this so much better? Do you have that feeling?
Yeah.
Except for that. I absolutely have. Yeah. I have that feeling with my work too. It's why the fuck is this one so much better than, but it just is, it's all the pieces fit together, and that knife, everything down to it's a wooden sheath, insert in the leather, and you put that blade back into the sheath, and just about a quarter of an inch before it doesn't fit no more, it just goes it sucks itself in.
Very cool.
I know, it's unbelievable. It's just wood, and the Morans are pretty primitive looking. All of a sudden it's this thing's got a built-in vacuum. It just and I'm like, how the hell did he do this? And then the handle is it just everything on it. It's and the thing of it is, it's just not me picking it up. It's everybody that has picked that knife is wow, man. Right, and I have a bunch of other Morans, but this one just does it for everybody. And to me, that's the coolest thing. That's what, I put it on the high bar there.
Yeah.
That's how, that's how it's special when other people touch it and can appreciate exactly the same kind of things, right? I see that with music stuff, with guitars or whatever, same thing. It's when you find a killer one, it doesn't matter who picks it up. Everybody gets that look on their face oh shit, this thing's amazing.
Yeah. Another one too, just going a whole different direction is, I got a Manuel Esposito dagger.
Nice.
And again, it's surgical.
Is that the one from TKI last year? Or was it this year?
Yes.
Oh,
this one is from the Miami show last year, actually. Yeah. Again, people pick it up and they're like, you open it up, a knife, like Rexfords are kind of like this too, but like, this is just like, just even goes beyond it. It's like you open it up. It's like, I can't believe I just opened it up. It's just that smooth.
Yeah.
And it's a big, it's at least a 4-inch blade. It's just so slick. And again, it's like, I show my badass tactical buddies this knife. I'm like, look, I know this, you're not into this, but but just open it up. And the same thing, they look at it like, oh my God.
We've got some cool mechanisms and it's just so clean.
His work is pretty amazing.
Oh, it completely is. Yeah. I mean, he just another guy that just keeps pulling the rabbit out of the hat. It's just unbelievable. Some of my Michael Walkers are like that too. They're just, again, like that guy's been making knives for 40 years and he just keeps topping the next one. I mean, how do you do that? I can't say I can do that in my work.
Yeah.
Right.
You start either resting on your laurels or, your noodle just gets dry. It's like, how do I rethink this one? And he just goes into his cave and comes out with a new model. And it's like, like nonchalant. It's like, really?
Right.
It's just unbelievable. I have a Buster Warinsky that's kind of special to me. It's just a boot knife, but it was Buster's first engraved knife.
Oh, wow.
Oh, nice.
And it's from 1976, I believe. And it's like, it's hard to believe that it's his first knife that he engraved. But it tells you right there, like, wow, this guy was special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really a cool knife.
Is that a piece he engraved himself?
He did. Yeah.
Very cool.
And then, I think he grew up as a painter in like a town that doesn't even exist anymore in Nevada. And, started like a lot of you guys just like banging on some steel, like in the 60s. And, next thing you know, he's like, I can make a living at this. And I mean, you look at his body of work, it's breathtaking, a lot of it.
Yeah. He's got some amazing pieces. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. One of the greats.
And then I believe like he started, he got into engraving and then started like teaching it like a night school. And that's how he met Julie.
Right.
And then Julie, by her own right, she's just an unbelievable knife maker, not to mention, her engraving. So I had the opportunity to, getting into another knife here is a Steve Johnson Big Bear.
Nice.
What's cool about it is it's the only carbon fiber one he'll ever do.
Huh.
It has a carbon fiber handle, and he says, Kevin, that carbon fiber trash my shop. He goes, my shop will never be the same. So this is the only one ever made. And it's an AKI knife that I believe somebody, won it and didn't pick it up. So me, I put my hand up.
Right.
I'll take it. I'm like, are you kidding me? That was another one I kind of had to pinch myself, like, really? And then the first thing we did is, like I said, Steve, I have to have, Julie, engrave this. And he was like, he wasn't sure about it.
Yeah.
But I said, man, and she lives like in the same state and they're really good friends. And I just said, this knife, it just needs her touch. With the carbon fiber and the gold, this thing is just going to look balls to the wall. Yeah. And he did it. He came back. He said, you were totally right. He said, that's just, I wouldn't have thought anything else. It was just like, it worked out so well.
What was his hesitation, Kevin? Was it that it's kind of this modern material combined with engraving? Like, it didn't seem like it was going to.
Yeah. And I think if anything, Mark, that's a good point. I think if anything, like, by the time he got it back, he was like, I like this knife a lot more.
Yeah.
I think like he just like, it was his maiden voyage into carbon fiber, but he wanted to really do it, but it's just not his thing. But again, it's like, if you ever like Steve Johnson, that man, the fit and finish, I just don't see anybody doing it better.
Yeah.
You know,
I wonder what carbon fiber that was, because some carbon fiber is way worse to work than others.
I'll have to ask him. Yeah, because it's the only one. It was an
That's
AKI Big Bear from 2015, I believe. So I've only had it a couple years.
Amazing.
But I have a Loveless Johnson, Maker's Mark knife that was Bob's landlord's knife that Bob paid him in lieu of rent. He gave him this knife, and it was in his collection for 45 years till I got it.
Oh,
and
wow.
I believe it's the only fighter that they made out of the 40 some odd knives that have that Maker's Mark.
Huh.
That's a killer knife.
Oh,
Yeah, very cool.
And I really like Loveless, but I really like the ones that, Steve was in the shop with.
Yeah.
The fit and finish on them. I have a couple of, his work that, he has told me that, yeah, I made that knife, and you can just tell. And, my existence with steel is like a demo saw and re-rod. So I don't know a lot about steel, but, I know, you know clean work when you see it. And there's just that different level of Steve versus Bob. I will say, and I like the Lawndale early Riverside era the best, because for one thing, that Bob had his hands on it all.
Right.
But the one really cool thing, and I got this from John Denton, who's, if you're ever going to talk about Loveless, you need to go no farther than talk about Mr. Denton, because he's the man. But I was always enthralled with the Big Bears like you are, Mark. And I happen to get, my Big Bear has, two nude, Maker's Mark on each side. And, those to me are, mid 80s and on, So
Yeah.
I'm always a little skeptic about it. So John calls me up and he's like, I got the Big Bear for you. And, I see it and I'm like, I want one maybe a little old. He goes, no. He goes, this one Bob made for Jim, his partner.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. So those as a set have like a nice story to them.
Yeah.
And,
cool.
Again, it all comes down to the hunt and like, okay, what's the provenance of that knife? What does that mean? And it takes patience, like it's so easy to be a kid in a candy store, but doing your homework in the long run just pays off.
Right. No, I've experienced the same thing where having a theme or a specific aspect to the collection, it makes it much more fun and interesting to me.
Yeah. Another guy that, not many people think about or talk about too. And it was funny. I think I was chatting a little bit first, with messages with, David Sharp, who I just think is like a wonderful maker, of
Yes.
the younger guys. I mean, his Loveless, he's just got him down.
Yeah.
Him and maybe Charles Vestal, but, we were talking about, just who we like, and he was asking me some questions about Lum and stuff. And, all of a sudden he comes back and he goes, I really got it for Ted Dowell, TM Dowell. I mean, his work, I have some of his Integral Hunters, and man, he just he sort of came up with the same boot as during the Loveless era.
Yeah.
But, it was sort of one of those guys that's kind of in the shadow,
Right.
a lot of people don't know about him. Man, his work, I'd put his work up against anybody. It's just absolute gorgeous work.
Very cool.
Oh, yeah. And he defined the integral as we know it today.
Yeah. I mean, completely.
Super light hunters.
Yeah. And gorgeous work. I mean, really flowy little knives.
Again, it's like one of those knives you're just, you pick it up and the balance is there. You could feel like you could walk across a high wire act with it. It's like you just have a lot of confidence with it.
Awesome stuff, Kevin. Very cool of you to talk about some of these special pieces from your collection. Like you said, if you don't mind, if you could grab some pictures of them, and once we get the episode out there and people can hear it, if you if you'd be willing to share a couple pictures of
Totally.
some of these pieces, it'd be really cool for people to be able to connect the dots between what you're talking about. And I think it'll be pretty obvious right away that these are really real deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll begrudge myself and, get a camera going. That means I have to get a computer and all that crap. Okay. Yeah. No, absolutely. I'd be honored to do it because it's funny. It's like, when the caveman got on Facebook, due to the new era of, knife collecting, and my son set me up with all this crap. And I actually I was like one of the last Mohicans to have a phone. I always said to people, I'm just not that important of a person. You can't wait till tonight when I get home, but, that excuse ran out. But anyway, I got onto Facebook and, then I got to be friends with you guys, Michael and Sean. I asked them, I said, man, and I was kind of nervous too, cause I'm all new at this social crap. And, I was like, I said it to Sean, I was like, would you mind if I throw somebody else's, knife up? And, I don't think I got the sentence out, and Sean was like, yeah, man, fuck yeah. And it's like, and again, that's why I think what you guys are doing with this podcast is such a necessary thing.
Thank you.
We appreciate that.
It's going to hit, I think it's just hitting on all cylinders. And I think, I think you're going to have some competition. I think, Kevin Kleinblades, he makes fixed blades. I think he was
Is
asked
he the
by
dude
Blade.
podcasting for Even Heat?
I think I'll go on his Instagram. You can check it. He makes beautiful blades. I think he's from Maine.
Because I know Even Heat started a podcast. I had to get on their website to order a replacement part and saw that they have one. And I believe his name was associated with it.
That might be it. And I think it was even Blade Magazine had asked him to do it too. So, my point is you guys are doing all the heavy lifting and the ball is rolling. And I think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
But, kudos to you guys. Because, again, too, it's not to dribble on about, my IT, woes, but for someone like me to ask my son to put the podcast app on my phone and then actually listen to you guys for 2 hours, you got to be doing something right.
Right.
So
we've gotten a number of people that have given us that kind of feedback about, this is the first podcast they've listened to. Jerry McGinnis said the same thing.
Yeah.
I asked him, hey, Jerry, have you listened to the show? And he goes, I don't listen to podcasts, man. I don't do that. And the next time I saw him, he's like, oh, hey, I decided to figure out how to do that. And I really like it. So it's been very cool. We appreciate the kind words. I think, again, we really like the idea of talking about the story, and how people all kind of come to this different ways. And I think people appear to be embracing that and appreciating it. And hey, if we can help, then great.
Yep. I think it's a winner.
All right. So Kevin, if you can post some pictures when you get time, that'd be awesome.
We'll do. Yeah.
And, we're going to switch gears slightly and put you on the spot with a couple of questions.
Okay.
So I think Tom's going to ask you one, and then we'll kind of go around the table.
Yeah, Kevin. So I've got a question, kind of relating to old school makers. Who's your favorite underrated old school maker? We've talked about the big names, but who's somebody that most people wouldn't pick?
We always joke around about the mark of the maker factor on these reference books and stuff.
Yeah.
So make sure you have all of these that you want, Kevin, before this episode goes live.
It's, I don't know if this, I know he wouldn't suit it because but people again, I bring up Ted Dow, but I bring up someone like Jess Horn. He's almost forgotten in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I could agree with that.
Yeah, I get that. Our industry has a very short memory.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this guy's work is every knife I pick up, and for a long time he was on top of the dog pile, and he's doing work with kind of in conjunction with Loveless and stuff. But it's these names just get buried, and
yes,
I'm like, man, like, have you touched this guy's work?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, very, very good pick.
Yeah.
Well, and like you said, it almost feels like, and maybe sometimes people wouldn't even take it well, right? With the whole underrated thing, right? But at the same time, like Tom said, it's short attention span theater, right? Where people can't seem to remember names or stuff. People kind of fade out, but there's from the spotlight. But hey, man, if we can shine some light in someone's direction and people can get turned on to some good work that's maybe isn't flavor of the week, then that's a winner for everybody.
And again, like, guys that like, like Richard Hodgson, I think he made less than 100 knives. The guy I think made like prototype instruments for NASA or something. I mean, he made, just somebody that you never heard of, but his work is incredible. I mean, absolutely. Dervin Howard's another guy. Each knife probably took 3 months to build.
Right.
But they're incredible. I mean, they're works of art. And they're just kind of lost. So yeah, I mean, I'm not picking like no-namers that work out.
Right.
Well, they are. They're no-namers that are working out of a garage, but their work is like incredible.
Yeah.
Real quick, just something that I have a question. Do you have any of Rod Chappelle's work?
One, yeah.
Awesome stuff.
Another guy that's
I've always loved his work.
Yeah.
Join the club.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we could go on for days,
right?
Because there's so many guys like back in that era, and you look at a lot of times I'll look at again my old books or whatever, and a couple times a year I'll go through all of them, and I'll forget about some guys, and I'll be like, oh my god,
Right.
I use the excuse that I've got to rearrange, and that allows me to look through them again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's funny is, and Sean will love this, and I know you guys will too, because I posted it on, is, Virgil England.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I finally, I have two, and I got one back that got all polished and everything. And by mistake, I left it on the kitchen table. Well, long story short, it's in my wife's collection now.
I hate when that happens.
Well, she's got good taste, man. You shouldn't be surprised by that.
That was that hurt.
Oh yeah,
but in a good way.
Sean, what about you? You got a question for Kevin?
Yeah, man. Do you got a movie knife? Is there a knife from any movie that stands out to you that you really enjoy?
There was like a cleaver scene in the Gangs of New York.
Yes.
Yeah, oh yeah.
That whole thing I just completely dug. But I guess it's also because of Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah. It was a fantastic movie.
Well, that was a pretty blade-heavy movie, all things considered.
It was.
I almost chose that one.
Totally.
I mean, they may have been butcher knives, but they's fucking knives.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. Yeah. I mean, that movie just hit it for me with the whole knife scene.
Excellent. Fantastic answer.
I don't think I've seen that.
What?
No?
What?
No,
Martin
Dude, do
Scorsese?
yourself a favor and check that shit out.
never seen it.
You need to watch it tonight.
Yeah, Daniel
The
Day-Lewis'
intensity.
Bill the Butcher is fucking phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's...
I'm on.
Well, I have a kid that's like in the film business, so to speak, so he tells me like what direction to go.
There you go.
I'd be lying if I didn't credit to him.
Well, I guess we just put Tom onto it.
Yeah, good.
Right?
I remember we were working up the Knives in the Movies episode. I remember Birch thinking about that one, kicking it around as a potential.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
What about you, Michael? You got a question you want to ask?
Oh, favorite Randall. Do you have one? I know you had the one that you saw as a kid, and it's going to be hard probably to not pick that one.
Yeah. And I don't know what model it is. Because it was like one of those things where like my brother was like, he said, don't fuck with that.
Yeah.
And he gave me that look. So, and he was funny. It was like, I think I told the story to Sean. He gave me explicit instructions because that was like separately wrapped, and it was, from a buddy that didn't make it. And
Did it have finger grooves?
I did. Yep.
Probably a 14.
Yeah.
That would be my guess if it was Vietnam.
Definitely from that era. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was funny, Tom, my brother called it a Randell. He goes, don't touch that Randell.
Check
And
that
then-
out.
Yeah. And then later on in life, we're like, I'm sitting, he's winded up living with us. And I said, Tom, it's not a Randell, it's a Randall. And he goes, oh, okay. it was just kind of funny, And
That is cool.
yeah, the things you think of.
Well, very cool. Kevin, we appreciate you taking the time to walk us through some special pieces from your collection and talk a little bit about your history with this whole scene and your involvement with it. Do you have any questions for us that you wanted to ask at all?
No, man, I can't believe I talked this long. It flew on by,
When we were doing our own intro episodes, it was exactly the same case. None of us thought we were going to talk very long, and they ended up being quite long.
Yeah, it's funny too because my wife had said that wow, this is like 2 hours you got to talk, and it's funny you'll see me at a knife show and I'm talking like a mile a minute, but as a whole, for the last 20 years I've pretty much worked by myself. I have no employees, so you know what I'm saying. It's wow, you're gonna talk 2 hours,
Which is kind of like what we do. We're
exactly. So I knew you could relate. It's there's always a lot of, guys on the job with subcontractors and whatnot, but a lot of times I'm just doing my own thing. And, it's I'm in my head a lot and, it's just kind of funny. It's it just flew on by 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
The words get saved up. They all just come piling out.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you guys want to do a brief what's happening in the shop kind of thing?
Sure.
Tom's goal for this week was 1,000 knives, I think he said earlier or something.
No.
What do you got going, Tom?
Just back in the shop, hitting it really hard. We're trying to get the CNC up still. We're buying Rhino Cam Thursday, and then we're good to go. But yeah, I am trying to get a bunch of knives out this week, trying to hook everybody up. And my goal was 100 knives. I don't know if I'll make it, but we're moving towards it.
You
Aim
set
high.
some good goals, man.
Right? Aim high.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome. What about you, Birch? I know you got lots of things cooking over there.
I got the V4s. I'm trying to get the blades cut out. Got them all one process done, moving on to the next process, which is very daunting and overwhelming sometimes.
It's hard.
It's
hard to work in batches that big.
Yeah, if something's messed up, you're going to mess up a whole bunch of them. So you want to make sure you get it right.
For people that aren't super familiar or don't follow Birch's work, when he says V4, he's talking about his version 4 of his mid-tech project, and this is the one he's doing in-house. So,
yeah, sounds like a custom.
A long time coming.
Yeah, maybe it's somewhere. What did you call it, Tom? The me-tech?
Yeah,
me-tech.
What about you, Sean? What's going on down there?
Man, I had to get my heat treat oven back up and running this week, or at least try to. I had a relay go bad in it, I believe, so I'm waiting for a part on that. And I got a blade I'll probably finish up tomorrow or the next day, and then I've got blades I've blanked out to go into the heat treat oven that are sitting and waiting. So that's what I've had going on.
Nice.
Man, we've been busy as heck this past weeks. I still haven't gotten beads out there. I got stuff I got to do. Way behind. I'm on the Michael Birch schedule for
slow and low.
It's this damn show eating up your time.
Yeah, go figure. Show business.
Spending time on eBay looking for Randalls.
That is true. I spent my ray gun time and money on Randalls since the last show. I've been
due diligence, man.
Afflicted like everybody else.
Are you guys bidding against me?
What?
What?
Oh, that's funny.
Cat's out of the bag.
Yeah, exactly.
The Randall cat's out of the bag. Wow.
Yeah.
Late to the
party. Kevin's thing has me wanting to say Randell all the time now.
I'm going to now.
Yeah.
That'll screw you up for life.
Yeah, no doubt.
So one fun thing, the gathering is coming up. I actually bought a countdown clock that's going in my shop, and it's going to have the days, the hours, and the minutes until The Gathering.
That's funny.
Right? I figured, when that one's done, I'll come back and set it for the next show.
Yeah.
No.
No? Yeah, I mean,
No,
we need to know
I
that
don't want to
stuff.
know.
Dude.
I want to see that.
Otherwise, it sneaks up on you, and it's like 3 days away, and you're like,
Then you're pulling all-nighters.
Well, now you got this asshole clock behind you just looking at you.
it's going to be cool.
No.
Michael prefers the head in the sand approach.
Exactly. I get done when I get done.
Too funny. All right. Well, I was going to throw an episode 15 teaser in here, but I'm not sure we are 100% on what episode 15 is just yet. We got a bunch of things lined up, but maybe we're doing some Q&A. Maybe we're going to have a guest. I don't know. We got to sort that out still. So, but you'll hear us again in 2 weeks as usual. I think we are going to stay on cadence for foreseeable future here. So,
and Kevin, thank you so much for talking with us. It's been a pleasure.
Man, honored to do it. It was a pleasure.
Really, really appreciate it and look forward to seeing you at the next show.
Completely. Likewise, I'm back at you.
You got any parting shots, any final words you want to throw out there, Kevin?
I know you guys always talk about what you're fiddling with.
Oh, yeah.
You're not going to believe what I'm fiddling with. I am fiddling with a Bob Terzola Civil War era surgeon scalpel.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It just happens to be on the table here. And I'm like,
we're going to need pictures of that.
So that kept me busy.
It's going to get stolen.
I know. I think
don't
Bob
leave it
made
there.
a couple some years back. He was getting some surgery done or something, and he made a couple of these.
Yeah.
I think you guys might know the story better. I never asked Bob, but I think Sue said something like I overheard her at a table saying he wanted to make one and give it to the doctor, but
right,
just didn't fly. So
I think that's when he was having major surgery on his spine.
Yep.
I think that was 3 or 4 years ago, maybe something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. So this one's like
really cool.
6A14V titanium, stainless Damascus, 18 karat gold pins. The thing is just kick ass.
Huh.
Nice.
It's such a nice piece to hold. I could see.
Cool.
I would operate on this. That's for sure.
All right. Now I don't want to talk. Now I don't want to talk about what I was fiddling with. That makes me feel bad deep down inside.
It's very cool, though.
Awesome. All right. Well, like the guys said, Kevin, we really appreciate you joining us and talking a bit about your collection and your approach to it and all that stuff. It's been very cool. And high five to Miss Judy for making the technical piece of this happen on your side. It's very cool of her to help out. We appreciate her assistance as well.
Clearly my better half.
Rock on Judy. Woo!
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's it for the show. We'll talk to y'all next time.
Thanks, everyone.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Be well. Take care.
To learn more about our makers, you can find Tom Crine on the web at crineknives.net, in his Facebook group, Crine Knives, or in his Instagram account, at Crine Knives. For Michael Birch, check birchtreeblades.com, Facebook group Birch Tree Blade Works, or Michael's Instagram at birchtreeblades. For myself and the Raygun Bead Project, we're on the web at raygundivision.com. We have a Facebook group called Raygun Division, or my personal Instagram at msteiner. For those interested in photos, references from the show, or some discussion about the show itself, you can find us on the web at markofthemaker.com, in a Facebook group called Mark of the Maker, or on our Instagram at Mark of the Maker. Last but not least, the ultra cool and haunting background music we use for the show is a piece called Noir Guitar by Stevie's Amp Shack, found at the Free Music Archive and licensed under Creative Commons CC BY 4.0. Thanks for listening.